Fernandez, she's Marinela Silvestri, and she's Fabiana Farese. And in the following presentation, we're going to talk about the principles of task-based approach and how to apply in a group of young learners trying to cater for different learning styles. Okay? What is task-based language teaching? There are several definitions of task. The one from Willis, Stern, Foster and Segham, Noonan and Long. We're going to focus on the last ones. Noonan clarifies that a task is a piece of work which involves learners in comprehending, manipulating, producing or interacting in the target language, while their attention is principally focused on meaning rather than in form. He states that task-based language teaching represents a body of principles and procedures for making communicative language teaching work in the class. It focuses on the use of the authentic language through different meaningful tasks. It has its origins in the communicative language teaching and is one application of this philosophical orientation. Mike Sloan says a task is a piece of work undertaken for oneself or for another, freely or for some reward. And by task is meant the 101 things people do in everyday life, at work, at play, and in between. This is a real world task, things that people achieve through language in everyday life. When we use a real world task in order to teach the students something, they become pedagogical tasks. The main characteristics of tasks are its primary focus is the meaning, it has not a linguistic outcome, and it is a complete unit. Task types. One of the most known classifications is the one developed by Prabhu. He proposed a classification taking into account that for a successful communication, it is necessary to bridge a communication gap. So he proposed that the three main communication gaps are information gap, reasoning gap, and opinion gap. What is a learning style? The term learning style refers to the fact that every student learns differently. Technically, an individual's learning style refers to the preferential way in which the student absorbs, processes, comprehends, and returns the information. Individual learning styles depends on different factors: cognitive, emotional, environmental, and of course the one's prior knowledge of the person. So it's important for educators to understand the differences in the students' learning styles so they can implement best practices, strategies in their daily activities, in the curriculum, or in the assessments. The most common classification in different learning styles is the one to talk about three categories: visual learners, auditory learners, and kinesthetic learners. The first one, visual learners, understand new concepts through images, graphic organizers, maps, etc. The auditory learners understand the new concepts by listening and speaking, for example, in discussion groups. This kind of learners usually use the repetition as a technique for study. The kinesthetic language learners, they best learn through tactile representations of the information. They learn and understand by touching. There are also other classifications. For example, field-dependent learners are the ones who prefer to learn in a context, and field-independent learners are the ones who prefer to learn in a systematic, step-by-step order. Analytical global students, analyticals, are the ones who prefer to study alone, and global students are the ones who prefer to learn in groups through the usage of language rather than by study. Introverted are quiet persons that prefer learning in small groups or alone, and extroverted people are the ones who prefer to learn in large groups and feel comfortable with that.
Okay, now I'm going to talk about the benefits of using a task-based approach in the classroom. First of all, it provides a natural context and it brings into the classroom real-life situations. The students tend to feel familiarized with these situations, so it makes the learning process more relevant and meaningful. All the language resources are involved rather than just focusing on one pre-selected item of the language. Students are more exposed to the language and it is more communicative. And this last characteristic is due to the fact that task-based approach is a way of making communicative language teaching work in the classroom. So a task-based approach is obviously going to seek for communication. All these benefits inevitably lead to the fact that it is easier to cater to all the different learning styles using a task-based approach in the classroom. In a real-life communicative situation, all of our senses are involved. We listen in order to understand what the other person is saying, we speak in order to answer, we use all of our body language, we make eye contact, we even manipulate real objects, for example money at a shopping situation. And as task-based approach brings real-life situations into the classroom, all of the students' senses and styles are going to be involved exactly as it happens in reality. Now we are going to answer to this question. How can we cater to all the different learning styles through a task chain, considering a group of young learners with a B1 level? And to illustrate this idea, we considered a group of young learners aged 10 to 11. And before planning the task chain, we had to consider some of the characteristics of this age group. They tend to have a shorter attention span, they are more active, they are more imaginative, they prefer to learn by playing. So we had to take into consideration these characteristics and try to cater to all the different learning styles and created a task chain on the topic food. The idea is that the students at the end of the lesson have reviewed some vocabulary related to this topic as well as acquired new vocabulary and chunks to know how to act and react at a restaurant situation. First of all, and as a warm-up, the students will have to place categories. The idea is that they can write as many words as possible related to the topic, and they will have 5 minutes to do this. We wanted the students to review the vocabulary in a fun and dynamic way. Here we will be catering to our lexical and field-dependent students. Then, as a pre-task and as a way of scaffolding vocabulary, the students will place scavenger's hunt in the classroom. Little plastic food objects such as pizza, burgers, ice cream will be hidden in the classroom, and the corresponding names of these objects will be written down in little pieces of paper that will also be hidden. So the students all together have to find the objects and find the names and match the corresponding object with the corresponding name. They will have 5 minutes to do that, and there we will be catering for our kinesthetic students. Then, as another pre-task and as a way of scaffolding chunks of vocabulary, the students will be presented with a video that illustrates a food ordering situation at a fast food restaurant. And the students will be given a handout with the first dialogue of the video, but the sentences will be scrambled, and they will have to unscramble them in pairs. There will also be a stage of listening and repeating. Here we will be catering for our auditory, visual, introverted, and field-dependent learners.
This activity will last 15 minutes, and the objective will be to introduce key vocabulary and functions in a real-life situation. It will not be completely student-centered, since the teacher will introduce and explain this new vocabulary, catering mostly to auditory and visual learners. It will also cater as well to introverted students and field-independent learners who enjoy analyzing structure and vocabulary while practicing the principle of integration of form and function according to David Nanon's principles. This will give students the chance to experience the role of grammar when conveying meaning. Then, for our first task, number 1, students will work on a food menu. In this case, students will complete a fast food menu that incorporates some new terms such as cheeseburger, large french fries, etc. To the food vocabulary they have worked with in previous lessons. There will be 2 different handouts, handout A and handout B, both with images and words. Students with handout A and those with handout B will exchange their information in order to write the right word for the image or draw the right image for the word. This information gap activity, according to previous categorization of communication gap activities, will last 15 minutes. It will be a student-centered activity catering mostly toward visual and kinesthetic learners while practicing the principle of active learning according to David Nannon's principles. It will give students the chance to incorporate new terms when employing them. Then we'll move on to our second task, that will be a role-play situation. The classroom will become a fast food restaurant. In this case, students will be assigned to teams A or B according to the handout they previously worked with in the other task. Team A will play cashiers and B will play customers. Customers will use their previously elaborated menus to choose their order, and both teams will use the scripts they previously worked with as a guidance. Then the teams will play again, switching roles. This role play and opinion gap activity will last 15 minutes, in which students will recreate a real-life situation while having fun in an engaging activity that is also an age-appropriate activity. In this case, we are going to be catering mostly toward kinesthetic and extroverted learners, practicing the principle of reproductive and creative language use, while providing students with both the script and the opportunity to adapt it and play with it according to the situation they find themselves in. Then we're going to move on to our third and final task, that will be a birthday menu selection. The teacher is going to provide students with a handout containing a brief description of the fast food preferences of two 7-year-old children, Sally and Tommy. They plan to celebrate their birthdays in a fast food restaurant. The class is going to be divided in new teams, mixing the students from the previous teams A and B in order to take into account the heterogeneity of learning styles in the classroom. The teams are going to be instructed to choose one of the children and create a birthday menu for them, choosing the right burger, the right French fries, and the right drink according to the child's preferences. Afterwards, the teams will present their menu to the class, arguing why that is the right choice for either Sally or Tommy. This activity will last 15 minutes and provide students with the opportunity of participating of both a reasoning gap and an opinion gap activity. It is going to be a student-centered activity catering to analytical and global students, as well as introverted and extroverted students. Furthermore, our students will be making a decision that is going to alter the course of this task. So, to adapt the approach principle of helping students take ownership of the learning process to an age-appropriate level. Finally, we're going to close this lesson with a feedback session. The teacher and the students are going to sit in a row. The teacher will ask students to think of their favorite activity of this lesson, and then they are going to raise their hands as she mentions the different activities. The students are going to be encouraged to further explain their choices and why they feel this way. It will last 5 minutes, and the objective will be to wrap up the lesson with a student's reflection in order to practice the principle of reflective teaching as proposed by David Nannon. This task change was planned keeping in mind the 7 principles proposed by David Nannon, as well as the different communication gap activities proposed by Prager.
To conclude, we believe that every teacher should plan in their classes taking into account the needs and every student, and creating activities to contemplate all the different learning styles. The task-based approach is a way to guarantee this, because it helps, because it's familiar situations in which students are involved. We create a task change that illustrates this idea and that respects all the principles and characteristics of this approach, as well as all the different learning styles. The idea was briefly show how effective this approach is. Thank you for coming. We hope that you enjoy our presentation.